The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 112.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us today on the EL. Today we have Ilkka Lavas. He's actually from across the pond, I guess, as you would say. But I love having authors on from around the world. And he's got a very powerful story. English is not his first language, as you'll be able to tell, but he actually speaks very well. So, and again, if you want a chance to win this book, visit the elpodcast.com, become a VIP, and you'll have access to not only win this book, but books moving on in the future. Welcome, Ilkka. And thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thank you.
Will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally before we dive into the book?
Yeah. Hello. I'm Ilkka Lavas, a Finnish serial entrepreneur. I'm now 35 years old. I am involved with 10 companies, and I have around 100 people working in my companies. I started my first startup when I was 17 years old. So now I have been half of my life as an entrepreneur.
Excellent. So thank you for sharing that. Now let's jump right into your newest book, Unstoppable Entrepreneurship, which actually isn't available just yet, but will be in December 2014, later December 2014. And we're going to move quickly, but we're here to cover the top questions that our listener wants to get answered. And so what was the inspiration behind writing Unstoppable Entrepreneurship?
So I have been teaching entrepreneurs here in Finland and Scandinavia for last 10 years. I wrote my first book 7 years ago, and I wrote that about positive things about entrepreneurship. And now I have been growing my businesses after that, and I have got many successful growth companies. And I wanted to write down the principles and management tips what I have learned in my life that I want to share with my fellow entrepreneurs and my readers. So I have been teaching myself about being unstoppable, and how I think is that unstoppable entrepreneurship is something that helps people and companies to be more successful in your life. Being unstoppable makes people win again and again. You can learn from successful people and winners and become unstoppable yourself.
So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
So if you read management tips books or self-help books, they all are around the same topics about what makes you successful and how you set your goals. In this book, I open something about becoming unstoppable. I wrote into this book my biggest lesson of my career when my company went almost bankruptcy, and it was very, very hard times, and I learned a lot from that. But after that, I didn't stop. I wanted to give entrepreneurship a new chance, and after that, I have been entrepreneur for 12 years, and with these principles, I'm now running businesses for 6 million euro revenue here in Finland, and we are growing globally quite fast.
So how do you suggest the reader engage with your book? Is this one that they should read all the way through, or can they jump in and out based on information that they need?
These tips and chapters are quite easy to read, so you can read one chapter or another chapter. So many of my readers who have pre-read this book say that they can read this book in 2 hours, and they get very good ideas for their own life and good advice how they should think in different situations. So reading in 2 hours or 5 minutes per day in 2 weeks, it's choice is yours. This is inspirational book for any entrepreneur or anyone who is thinking about becoming an entrepreneur.
Great. So now that we know, the purpose behind the book. Let's take a deep dive into the content. I'm really looking to hand over the mic to you for the next, 5 to 8 minutes and have you run us through or take a deep dive into the content itself. So, will you take us through your book?
Yeah. So this book starts from 12 years ago. I was 23 years old and I had 70 people working in my company. So first chapter is about never giving up. I read a small part from my book. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 17 years old. At first, everything was pleasant, fun, and exciting. Later, in 2002, I was 23 years old and I had just finished my army service in Finland. The IT bubble had just burst. Thanks to my army service, I was in good physical condition. My company employed 17 people. When IT bubble burst, my company's volume of orders fell and we had a serious cash flow crisis. Things became much less pleasant, less fun and exciting. I couldn't sleep because I was worrying about how I could pay salaries for my employees. I was mentally burned out. I crashed. In fact, I almost went crazy. I had to make choice between two bad choices. Should I file my company for bankruptcy or should I try to continue the business? I honestly didn't want bankruptcy, so I thought about the later option. I didn't want to give up, so I started thinking, what is the worst thing that can happen for me if I fail trying to save this company? Well, I realized the answer was option one, bankruptcy. Regardless, if I failed at saving the company or didn't even try saving, the worst case scenario was that my company would go bankrupt. Luckily, my own house was not collateral to my company debts, so my own private property was protected. I calculated that I could save the company by downsizing the amount of employees and by handling all the sold but still open cases well. So I called tax officer and made a deal about the payment terms. One of the debtors took some of our office furniture as a payment for their bills. With heavy heart, I had to lay off 12 people, including some very good friends and my son's godfather. I saved wherever possible. I couldn't even pay my own salary for many months. The challenging downsizing period finally ended 14 months later when I paid my last unpaid tax payment. The pen dropped from my hand to the floor. I was exhausted, but I didn't give up. I survived my first big business challenge. It was difficult, a real life course in business and economy university. So this is my first chapter, and that's when I was my first big lesson. The other chapters, chapter 2, is about the things that makes you unstoppable. Third chapter is about reflecting your life habits, and it's very important to your life to know what you really are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. Fourth chapter is about managing yourself, and there is one of my favorite lines I have written: "Manage yourself, or someone else does." So this is about remind people about taking care of yourself, managing your time. And the fifth chapter is about how you can create new competitive advantages. How do you handle money? How do you live? How do you think life? And how do you set milestones? So this is most ideas of my book. So from crisis to success.
That's excellent. And thank you for, I know that you said that English is not your first language. So thank you for taking your time and taking us through that. And this next question is another way of breaking down the book into, and I guess putting it into a nutshell. And that's, if the reader could only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book, everything that you just discussed with us, what would you want that to be?
So as an entrepreneur, one of my favorite ideas is that if you want to be successful, you must understand that you have to be successful every day. So I believe that we shouldn't be waiting for the one day when we become successful. We should be living for the moment. So I wrote a small poem here. Time goes by. Can you hear it? Now, now, now. Not when you retire. Now. Not soon. Now. Not on Fridays. No. Not in the evening. No. So live for the moment.
Thank you for sharing that. And that really leads into our next portion as well, which is, do you have a favorite quote from your book? And it might be what you just said, live for the moment. But do you have that one or another one?
Yeah, maybe the other idea behind this book is that you should create a successful ecosystem. An ecosystem grows within you. Ecosystem is something that you create around you, about the networks you live in, the people who with are you. And as an entrepreneur, you handle money every day. And remembering that money is not the target that you are making. One of my favorite findings in entrepreneurship is that money is a tool, not a goal.
Yeah, that's a huge point. Thank you for sharing that. And if this next question is just, we have Book Lover that's listening right now. And so if there was only one book you could recommend to our listeners based on the way it's impacted your life, what would that be?
I like very much Fredmund Malik. His book, Managing Performing Living, has inspired me a lot in my career.
How old is that book? Is that fairly new?
How old is it?
Yeah, is that fairly new book?
No, that's I think it's from 80s or something. I think this book is from 19.
Gotcha.
No,
okay.
This is from 2000. He's a German guy.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's not that old. Very good. Well, I want to ask one thing before we depart, and that's, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you and your book, Unstoppable Entrepreneurship?
How they can find more information? Going to my webpage, unstoppableentrepreneurship.com. I think it will be available quite soon. Or Google me, Ilkka Lavas.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book with us.
Thanks.
Thank you so much again for listening in today. If you'd like more information on Ilkka or Unstoppable Entrepreneurship, just visit the elpodcast.com and we'll give you some additional resources there. Thank you.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.